awesome to have you in our show, Facts and Rumors, especially since we didn't meet for a long time. I think Blade Show 2019 was the last time. So how are you, my friend?
I am doing well. Of course, because of COVID, none of us have been attending any knife shows, which is a very sad thing for me because I realize how much I love interacting with everybody who comes to the show, and not just seeing the old faces, and but meeting new people, and all the fans who come up to me, and just being able to have a great time with them. I think that's what makes the shows so special.
I totally agree with you. So how does this COVID-19 pandemic work out for you besides the shows?
Well, it's making me and everybody who runs a business evaluate how to be more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, right now, with there is a huge number of people in the U.S. who are out of work. That is a big factor, especially when I sell a luxury good product. Again, not a lot of people are going to the stores, the malls, the restaurants, the theaters, or bars. They're not patroning those businesses, and all those businesses are affected. So I have been working with new team members in how we can adjust for this, and we're still working on it. Having a more online presence where we can interact with, I don't, I say customers, but they're really long time supporters of my work.
Yeah.
As you know, like this is my 18th year designing knives. So I have been, I've known some of these customers for a long, long time. I knew them before they got married. I knew them before they had kids, and now their kids are, in college. That is a long-term relationship,
Yep.
and they know that when they support my work, it is a long-term relationship. I take care of them. I warranty my knives for life, as long as they're not abusing the knives.
Mm-hmm.
And even that, we try to come up with a solution if there's an issue. And so really, COVID has really made us think, how can we make sure that the relationship that we have continues to grow, and we foster an environment where everyone feels tremendously great together.
Yeah, I think it needs different methods, different ways, thinking out of the box to still have an effective communication
Right.
with your customers. And of course, when you have customers for almost 18 years, since the start of your business in the knife industry, they almost become friends.
Yes.
And that needs another approach. Okay. Yeah. It's terrible. This COVID is terrible in a way for business, but also stimulating regarding innovation.
Right.
Other ways to communicate, other ways to stay in touch, and that's that kind of stuff. Okay, you told me, you told us you started approximately 18 years ago in the knife industry. When did you decide to go working as a knife designer full time?
Well, so this was kind of a dream, because when I've always been an artist. I drew knives in my notebook. I drew cartoon characters. I drew all kinds of stuff in my notebooks. And when I first got my first pocket knife, it was like a buck knife my uncle gave me, because he used to collect rifles. And every time you bought a rifle, they gave him a pocket knife, and he would just hand it over to me. Well, over time, I looked at these knives, and I was like, I want something different. I want more usability. And so I just started drawing my versions of it, and I remember right after college, I went to Malaysia, and I haven't been back to Malaysia probably in about 15 years. And I also took a trip to Thailand, and it was there that I met someone who was selling knives in a store, and we just started talking. You know, I was only there for 2 weeks, but we started talking, and he was like, you know, if you have a design in mind, I can actually get this made for you. And I was like, really? So we traded email addresses. This was the early days of email, and I drew a design for something called karambit, which was a hook blade predominantly used as a weapon for self-defense and attacking your opponent. And I emailed him a fax, and he got it made for me. You know, and that blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I actually have something in my hand that, you know, someone took from my drawings. Well, that just, you know, gave me the push I needed to start drawing more. And
Okay.
I drew a lot of folders, and then I started reading books. You know, there are a lot of knife making books out there, and I started seeing like, okay, let me cut out the drawings onto pieces of plastic. Okay, cheap plastic that you can just cut with a razor blade and snap off. And I'll use a drill to drill a hole for the pivot and then a hole for the stop pin. And that way I could see if it worked or not. And you know, that was when I found out none of my drawings worked. And then I was like, oh my God, I thought all my drawings would work tremendously, but none
Yeah.
of them worked, right? So I went back and then paper to do one drawing, because every time you make a change, you would want to make the change on the master drawing, else you could never replicate it. Eventually, over time, one of the knife makers sent me a copy of CAD, AutoCAD, and I left it on my desk, and I was just like, I look at it, and I looked at it. It was like a whole new language, right? Something that I had no idea, no training, and so I just started drawing lines, never thinking like anything was there a measurement, was there, because this was a whole new program.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I connected with a new maker named Eddie Baca, and his wife was an AutoCAD engineer. So I got the drawings to work where when I rotate, I didn't hit the stop pin and everything rotated in and out. And I was like, Eddie, you know, since your wife is an AutoCAD engineer, do you think I could hire her to look at my drawings to see if they're proportionate, you know, before I send them out to other makers and stuff? It's like, sure. So I sent her like 10 drawings, and she emailed me back. She's like, Leon, I don't know if you noticed, but the dimensions are all off here. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, your blades are 4 feet long and your handles are 5 feet long. That's bigger than a person. And I was like, so, you know, it's like a learning curve. And after that, she showed me how to correct them. She showed me how to size everything. And it was just like, okay, I am so glad that, you know, there were bumps in the road, because they're, you know, learning anything new, you're never gonna get it right the first time. But if you love it, you're gonna keep trying.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Awesome story. And learning the hard way, I think, is the best way to learn it, because then you never forget it again.
Right.
Okay, never regretted this part, because before you were a well-known chef.
I was a chef. And you know, it's funny because when I was in middle school or high school, right before I went into college, I really didn't know where I wanted to go. I really didn't know what it is I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I had to figure it out. So you know, I was trying everything, and you know, eventually I realized like I'm pretty good at cooking. And my family comes from a cooking background. My father and grandfather had a restaurant in Malaysia, and my father ran it. He was. It's not the same family. My father married into the family, and they didn't really like the fact that I would go into that, but it was an artistic venture, and I saw food as art. So I expressed that to my counselor in high school, and she got me into like a program where I would compete with other schools in the same in New York City. And at the end of that program, I had a scholarship, a full scholarship to college. It was a 4-year degree. Well, being a kid, I blew that scholarship after a year,
Mm-hmm.
but I was able to, you know, realize that I wanted to do that, and that university sent me on programs to France and to Germany to cook during my summer vacations, and that was an amazing experience. You know, I could never repay for that experience. You know, just to see a different culture, see how people lived and cooked, it really made me appreciate the world and the food. You know, I would never have learned that just being in New York City.
Yeah.
And I love the food world. I worked when I graduated and I was working professionally. You know, it was a normal day to work 15 to 18 hours a day, normal. And over time, you kind of realize like, okay, could I keep this up when I'm in my 40s and 50s? And I knew chefs who did. Or what if I had a family? Or what if I had kids? You know, could I still do this? But it was the love that carried me. You know, putting out great food, food that people appreciate, that was done well, that carried the day. You know, it wasn't about making the most money. It wasn't about, you know, having a title. It was just really the art of the craft. And in 2007, when the U.S. economy crashed, you know, I was already doing this hobby of knife designing and having custom makers produce my designs. But I was just doing it as a hobby because I never thought that I could make it a living. And you know, when the economy crashed, the hotel that I was working for, they offered me a buyout because they couldn't afford to keep most of us. And I was like, you know, I think that's the message. That is the call. And I was like, I may fall flat on my face, but I heard the call and I took the buyout. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't all straight road to success after that. You know, I went for a period of time where I wasn't working, where I was trying to do other things. I actually tried to collect used cooking oils to convert to biodiesel. And I studied the processes to do that. And then I moved to the Dominican Republic from New York City, and I lived there for a couple of years. And in that time, CRKT picked up Columbia River Knife and Tool. They started licensing my Eaton tool. And it was only, you know, I've been talking with them for several years. And they were always mystified by how they would fit me in because at that time, there weren't any just pure designers. You know, people who only design and got a custom maker to make their products. And they told me that that was one of their big concerns. They told me that, you know, we don't know where to fit you in, was what they said. And at the same time, I was like, give me a chance. So this was going on for several years. And when I came up with the Ian tool, they had changed owners, whereas the previous vice president became the owner of the company. And I met him for the first time. And he looked at the Ian tool. His name is Rod Bremer. And he was like, this is phenomenal. And the Ian tool was something I came up with because I wanted women to carry a self-defense tool, but not looking like a self-defense tool, but also having multiple uses, not just like, because, hopefully no one will ever have to use it that way. But if they needed to, they had the opportunity to. And it was something he looked at, but it wasn't like straight away like, oh, this looks great, we're gonna sign you up. It took about 8 months, just repeated conversations and seeing like where they're at. And again, the same conversation of, we don't know where to fit you came up. And then I went to a trade show, and another company approached me about the Ian tool. And I asked CRKT again, I was like, look, you're the first one I approached, so I really want you to be the first one to have a shot at this. And they were like, you know what? We had a vote yesterday, and we approved that project, and it's a go. So the next few, like 6 months later, there was a SHOT Show, right? And they invited me to go to be able to speak about the Ian tool. And this was around 2008, and we talked about, or 2009. And so I was talking to people, and a lot of the company staff of CRKT, I was like, yeah, man, that's great. But they kind of had this look like, we'll never sell that thing. That thing is a joke. And even other makers, they were laughing at me like, that thing's a joke. I can't believe they're making that garbage for you. But they didn't say that exactly. It was just a look on their face. And within the next year, all those company employees, which were like the vice presidents, the head of sales and marketing, the head of international buyers, and all these distributors, they all came up to me. That is the #1 selling item, and it blew all of their sales projection.
Yeah, awesome.
And awesome. And then the years after that, they were like, we sell that Ian tool like if we were selling candy in a store, and it has been several, probably more than a decade now. And of course, there are other competitors out there with the similar tools and stuff. And, but it was that kind of brought me to the forefront. And I always thank the man who gave me a shot, because nobody else did,
Yeah.
And it's really, where that kind of gave me some faith that I'm actually moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an awesome story. And that also provided you in a basic income, because you quit your job as a chef, or they bought you out. So you could provide yourself with a basic income, and it gave you probably a chance for more collaborations.
Yeah.
More designs.
So that really did, and with the success of that, they looked at my folder designs, and they've given me multiple opportunities through the years to do folders and tools. The Viva tool was the second tool they did, and it did very well for them too. And other ideas that I came up with a slip joint for the European market. The GSD was produced by them, and and with that, a lot of makers, I already had a very good rapport with custom knife makers, and just working with them just gave me more foundation to kind of see how I can make this into a real career.
Yeah.
And you know, over the last 10 years, you've seen like custom knife makers, they're getting bombarded with orders. So the custom knife makers, you know, they might have like at first a 1 or 2 month backlog. Now it's like several years. So it didn't really make sense for me to keep uh, waiting because my designs evolve over time. That you know, sometimes I look at it, I'm just like, oh my goodness, you know what? I don't love that as much. Or I want to change this. Well, you know, if a maker already cut out the parts, they're like, well, you can't really change it now. And about 5, 6 years ago, you know, Chinese manufacturers started advertising their work online. And you know it was something that was like another hump that I needed to get over because I heard so many stories about Chinese companies. I hear so many things about not trusting them or this and that, and it really caused a phobia in me. So I wanted to see how I can produce a knife on my own in China. And before I start that story, I did try for a while, a long time, to find manufacturers in the US to produce my work. I was working with one manufacturer and he failed miserably. I have a box of parts in my office and I look at it once in a while. None of the sizes would match up. The blades are longer than the handles. I put a 1/8 inch stop pin. When I put in the stop pin, it falls right out of the hole. And I look at that box. This is a reminder of how bad things can go
Yeah.
in terms of manufacturing, because I would never put my name on any of them. So because of that phobia, I was also very cautious when I approach a Chinese manufacturer. You know, just that background, but just gave me such a phobia. And you know, it was David that I talked to first, David Dang of Riyadh. And it was because I saw this knife called the Horizon that they produce. And I was like, China made that? Really? So I actually sought out that knife before I even talked to him. I sought it out. I paid full retail for it from a dealer, and I received it. And then when I got the knife, I was like, "Are you serious? This is better than anything I've ever seen."
Yep.
You know, they were using a great steel. They were the first ones to use M390. The handles were two halves with an integral backspacer on either end, and it was all pocketed. And there was a 3D texture on the top, and I was like, "That's ridiculous!" And it was $400,
Yeah.
right? And I saw it, I was like, "Wow, okay, I bet you they're like making $20 on this knife if they're selling for 400, right?" So I looked up David. I couldn't find an email, but I found that he had a Facebook profile. So I contacted him just to see if he'll talk to me back, right? And he messaged me back. And I was like, is this, are you the owner of this company that made this knife? It's like, yeah. And you know, I could tell like he's speaking English as a second language. So he was probably translating everything I said in English, and then I had to translate everything he wrote out in Mandarin. And you know, over time, you know, the frustration of the language barrier got less and less, and we were able to have a conversation. I think it was over 6 months, and then I was like, you know what, I'm kind of interested in seeing what the process would be for me to have one of my designs made for you. And he Googled me, he did research and stuff like that. He's like, I know who you are. I know of your knife designs. And I was like, oh, I'm pleasantly surprised that you did. And so we started talking. And at the time, he was like, send me a drawing, but also send me a three-dimensional drawing. And at that time, I wasn't doing any three-dimensional work yet. So I had to hire someone to do it. And it was a friend. And I paid him his fee to convert my CAD drawing into SolidWorks. And so, and also after I paid that money and did everything, it was like hesitation to like send him the drawing, right? Like, because this is like my IP, this is my intellectual property. Do I feel like this is a person I never met before, right?
Chinese,
so like, yeah,
known for copying.
right. So I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Am I actually sane or not? But I was like, you know what? You've come this far down the rabbit hole. Keep going. So I sent him the drawing, and he looked it over, and of course the imperial measurements they had to convert to metric.
Yep.
And he was like, okay, I also need you to send me this amount, and we'll make 2 prototypes for you. And I was like, okay, you know, it wasn't that much. It was like he only charged me like $200 for a proto, so I sent him $400. And then I got the proto. Hank, I was blown away. The actions, I mean, the finish, just the look of it. I was like, you know what? A custom maker couldn't make this knife and sell it to you for $500.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, so what do you want to do now? I'm like, I think I want to, what is, okay, how many do I need to order, right? And so he gave me a quote of like 300 pieces and how much it'll cost. And then he was like, okay, are you good with this deal? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you have to put down 40% for me to start. And I was like, my heart is like, okay, I had that money, but it's very different from sending a few $100s to sending tens of thousands. Right?
Yeah.
So I wired the money to him, and you know, in several months.
Push the button after seconds of hesitation.
Yeah, I sent it, and it was just like, okay, did the whole world explode, or you know, are we still here? But you know, back then, because I was probably one of the first people to give him a contract, I received my shipment in just a matter of like 2 to 3 months. You know, it was very fast. And when I announced the project, you know, it sold out within like weeks.
Which design was this?
This was the Warrior 1 design. The Warrior 1.
Yeah.
And you know, today when I look back at the design, you know, it's flat scales. There are no pocketing. It's a flat ground blade. But when you got that in your hand and you felt the action from which the blade deployed, you were blown away. Mm-hmm. There was nothing on the market that, if it wasn't an automatic, deployed that fast and that crisp. So that made me want to come up with a second project and a third project, and it kept going on and on. And now over the course of like, it's like 6 years, going on 7 now, you know, David is my buddy. He's my friend, my brother, you know. We talk a lot of things, we fight, we argue, we get together for you know, when we're over here for a trade show, or if I'm over there, I visit his factory in China. And they've grown. I mean, now they have contracts from everybody. But I never forgot, like, you know, the first few times we spoke, and it was just like, you know, this was like the beginning of internet business, you know, for me, and really trusting someone on the other side, like, you know, before the days of us having video conferencing on, you know, and be able to see what that person actually looks like, and his demeanor, and if you could see if he's being truthful and honest, you know. So all that, I mean, I'm very grateful for the experience because it really brought out something special,
Yeah.
you know. And now there's a lot of Chinese companies, and they're doing tremendous work. I get emails from different companies who, you know, want me to design for them, and I'm very grateful for the offer, you know. And sometimes I consider what would it be, you know, because this has just kept opening more doors and opening more doors. And I'm very happy that I made this choice because, you know, there were times when I kind of look at it and I'm like, maybe I made the wrong choice, right? And in business, you can have that at any moment. I mean, like I was saying before about COVID, it has really made a lot of business reevaluate themselves. You know, right now, I mean, most of these restaurants cannot open. Can they? You know, they have to evaluate if they can stay in business and pay their staff, which is, you know, before when I was in the restaurant business, my most important task was to make sure that every member of my team was taken care of. You know, I think that is instilled in me. You know, just like the same of like my team now, which include David and his team in his work in China, and everybody who's a dealer for me, everybody who is, you know, bought my knives, am I taking care of them? You know, because you might have a great day today, but tomorrow is a new day. It might not be the same. So I see that, and I'm like, you know, I don't want to be that guy that's like, hey, give me your money, give me this, give me this. How can I benefit you?
Yep.
How can I make you successful?
Yep.
Because when you buy one of my knives, it is a lifelong relationship. I have people who contact me who bought one of my knives, and all of a sudden they broke their clip, right? And you know, and I know, small parts are the most expensive things.
Yeah.
You know, not the blade, not the handle, because you don't break those unless you're totally like trying the blade. But the small parts, I mean, that's going to be expensive. Well, you know, sometimes I don't have it, and I contact David. I'm like, you know, this guy who broke the clip, can you make me like, you know, a dozen clips? He's like, okay, it's going to take like 2 months because I have to schedule it on my machine and everything, and I you know, go back to the customer and tell them, hey, if you're patient, I can get you a clip, but it's going to take a little while. Do you mind? And they're like, yeah, it's cool. You know, then I send them the clip. I tell them how much it costs. Usually it's like 15, 20 bucks, which is cheap because most custom knife maker will charge you $100 for a mill clip.
Yeah.
You know, and they're glad to pay. They're happy that I'm able to provide that for them.
Yeah.
Now the hardware, you know, if they screw up taking the knives apart, which I foresaw, that's why I tell people, please don't take apart the knife if you do not know how to take apart the knife. Well, the natural tendency for all of us who like knives is that, hey, I want to clean this, I want to keep this pristine, I want to make sure that this, you know, is always well kept. Well, if they don't know how to take it apart, sometimes they screw up the hardware. I send them new hardware. It's not that big a deal, you know. But again, it all goes into how that person addresses the situation. If they come back and say like, you sent me a knife with bad hardware, you know, I'm gonna be like, that's impossible. We don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you know, if they just say, can I buy some hardware from you? You know, that's not a problem. Most of the time, I'll just send it to you. You know. So it's like a relationship, you know, you treat me good, I treat you good.
Yeah.
Because I want you to see like, you know, I'm not someone who's going to disappear, you know, well, Lord willing, right? We're only guaranteed by what the, you know, the guy upstairs promises us.
Yeah.
So I want to take care of them. I want to make sure that they're happy with their product from the time they get it to the time they feel they can pass it on to someone.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know? That is the relationship I'm
yeah,
building.
exactly. Yeah. So I think the Chinese manufacturers, in a way, brought a revolution in the knife industry.
Mm,
They also pushed the American and the European manufacturers to raise their standards, in a way,
yes, yes,
and that's a good thing.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people don't understand exactly how a price for a knife is established. It's not only hand labor, but it's also machines, the
right,
investment in machines. And for some things, for making the knife, so like hand labor is, of course, cheaper as in Europe or in the United States, but
hmm,
importing steel or importing machines or whatever is more expensive in China.
right.
And
Well,
so
China has a lot. They produce CNC machines. The CNC machine is not the expensive part. It is the little bits they use to mill the material that gets extremely expensive.
yeah,
Uh, Especially when they're milling things that aren't very crisp, like titanium is very gummy, carbon fiber is worse. Uh, so those are the expensive things. And I'm glad you brought this point up because a lot of my customers and even people who into knives, they don't realize the investment that a company has to make to be able to produce a product.
yeah,
So we have to buy steel by the tonnage, and to ship it over there, if we're using a steel from like N390 is from
roller,
Bowler, and if I'm using S35VN or LMAX is also from Udahong. But S35VN, S90V, S30V, they're all from Crucible here in the US. So we're not just paying for the steel, then we got to pay for the shipping to get
yeah,
to China. And that could take anywhere from a month to 3 months, depending on how the company ships, usually by freight. Um, and then when it gets there, because steel is considered, they get a luxury tax put on it. So anywhere from 40 to 50% off your retail. So we're paying a tremendous amount of money just in the initial investment.
yep,
I also ship micarta and different handle materials, also like carbon fiber. And in the beginning, I bought, oh my God, a ridiculous amount of marble carbon fiber. Well, the way they process marble carbon fiber is basically just like it's like taking a T-shirt and then crumpling it and crumpling and crumpling, and then trying to squeeze it as flat as you can, and then you let it set and dry and age, right, and harden. Well, as they're crumpling it, all the resins doesn't get into all the nooks and crannies of that carbon fiber. So when let's say you go to a store, you look at a piece of carbon fiber, or you go to a purveyor, it looks like a piece of carbon. It looks perfect, beautiful, glossy finish, perfect. You send it over, they cut it out on the mill, they start doing the 3D mill on the surface. Now you see all these little tiny holes in it
yeah,
because all the resins didn't get in.
yeah,
And they're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do with this? So at first, they just left it in a box, right? And they called me and then we talked about it. And then I went back to my knife maker. So I was like, I need to ask you some advice here because I'm losing a lot of money. And they're like, Leon, the mill is just exposing the surface. There's always going to be low voids in carbon fiber, even in the crisscross woven ones. You always see something. What we do is we brush a layer of epoxy on top, and then we let that dry, and then we sandpaper it so it looks all even again. And I'm like,
Okay.
how long does it take?
Yeah.
It usually takes a couple of days because you got to brush it on, you got to let it harden, and then you got to buff it off, and then you got to see if there's still some more little pinholes.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we didn't use any of those for a long time, but then after a while, we were like, okay, we tried different sources of and different manufacturers of carbon fiber. They were all pretty much the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it didn't matter how much money you paid for them. And then, you know, there are now some that say that, oh, it's void free. On occasion, we will still find it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just something that even the manufacturer cannot say like, you know, it's 100%.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, and that's the thing. It takes time to learn these things. And in the past 6 years, I think Riyadh has come leaps and bounds in their learning, because they started off just as like a custom knife maker with themselves and a few guys in their shop to do little things here and there, and now they have expanded, and you know, they train their staff, and in the town that they're in, there are a lot of these custom knife makers just from all the shops that are there, and so they're able to get more experienced help.
Yeah.
Especially as you see the amount of products coming out, and they're really high quality products, and everybody loves carbon fiber, you know. So we want to be able to utilize this material, and of course give the customer a great product.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question I want to ask you. I saw your catalog for 2020. Can you tell the viewers what we can expect from you for 2020, the exciting news?
Well, I'm excited to say that production is finally going again. Because of COVID, they were shut down for several months. And we are getting products on track. So I'm releasing them as I get them. So I ran an intro offer on the carbon fiber Zulu, and then I am next will be the Warrior 2 version 3 with the shield pivot. That's new for 2020, and then that will be the Lanny with the shield pivot, which is the version 2 of it. Those two are my most popular knives. I've always sold out of them, and everyone who gets them, oh my God, the reviews I get on them is amazing. And then after that will be some of the EDC series, the Field Duty EDC with the monoblock handle of G10 and carbon fiber, and with Almax steel. And then the cuff, the 3-inch and the 4-inch with monoblock handle with G10 and carbon fiber. Then after that, we'll get the GSD, the new one, the T1, and the Warrior 3.
All exciting news.
Oh, hopefully before the end of the year, the 2 integrals, the 18, the Model 18 celebrating my 18 years, and the L1, which is a small modern traditional integral.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if we'll make it before the end of the year. Some of it might go into 2021.
Okay. Okay. Well, you already mentioned the L1 to celebrate your 18th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
In 2022, you're working for 20 years in the knife industry.
Right.
So that's a real anniversary word, I think.
Yes.
Already working on a special design for 2022?
Of course. I'm always thinking and drawing and seeing what I can bring that is, you know, almost like when people can see like the lineage from my designs. And yeah, 2022 is coming up very fast.
Yeah.
So there will be a special design for that.
Okay, okay. Anything else you want to share with your fans and followers, Leon?
I want to thank you for this opportunity, Hank, to be able to share with everyone and thank them for all the years of support I've had from you and all the new fans that come about. I want you to understand that this is a lifelong relationship. And anytime you have a question, anytime you have something that you want to talk to me about, please feel free to contact me. My number and email is on my website, and I'm sure it will be presented here. I look forward to speaking with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leon, for being in our show. I hope to see you soon face to face on a new show.
Yes.
And have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much, Hank. You too. I can't wait until we can get back at a show and share a pint and everything else.
Exactly, exactly.